There's something that needs to be said before we begin today's podcast, and that's cultural tourism and appropriation. Events like this bring to light a culture that was historically invisible for quite some time and is now mainstream. It is important to note that I and the speakers in this podcast are not involved in drag or Vogue culture. We aren't performers in a house. We aren't active participants within this culture. We're just some LGBT plus kids hoping to shed a little more light on the beauty and history we have come to know. If you find this podcast interesting, please consider supporting the Black and Latinx communities of amazing queens and performers alike. Before Stonewall, there was Fag Ball. Do I have your attention? Good. Hello, all you rainbow hounds of the night, the creatures of the night, and my magical beings of all shapes and sizes. My name is Sam Ascencio. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Vice President of LGBT Plus and Allies.
Hello all, my name is Michaela Ferraris. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am the President of John Jay Radio.
And today, I'm hijacking radio to bring you a special feature. On today's podcast, I'll be throwing shade and death-dropping my way through drag culture history.
So today is going to be the first podcast of a 3-part series.
So don't sashay away, honey, because we're just getting started. Fag balls exposed. Queer seek succor. Death kneel of degeneracy. Third sex spreads anew. The year was 1931, and Fag Ball was the newspaper equivalent of clickbait of the decade, and headlines like these made queer life extraordinarily visible in the Broadway brevities. The balls at the Hamilton Lodge in Harlem drew thousands to dance and spectate, I can't even speak, since 1869, and in 1920 and 1930, they were all the rage. They were cross-dressing extravaganzas. The balls and their customers were described with curiosity to a deep moral outrage. So it's no surprise that despite their growing popularity, drag balls were deemed illegal and immoral by mainstream society. Sounds like something my mother would say. Anyways, a moral reform organization known as the Committee of 14 periodically investigated the balls. In 1916, the committee released a report detailing the scandalous behavior they witnessed. The scene was filled with phenomenal male perverts in expensive frocks and wigs, looking like women. 130 reports later, the committee demanded that such perversion desist and stop. These balls created an opportunity for members of the gay community to appear publicly in drag, an activity that was not only taboo, but also illegal in many places. The balls did not just attract queer patrons, it attracted straight artists, writers, ball appreciators outside the LGBT community, like Charles Henry Ford and Parker Tyler, in the allure of the exotic nature of the balls. In the book, The Young and Evil, Ford and Tyler describe the scene as this: whose celestial flavor and crucial in color no angelic painter nor nectarish poet could ever conceive, lit up like a high mass. Though drag balls were created for fun and as a place to connect with other gay men, the association of the notorious balls to LGBT plus people helped pave the way for an establishment of queer culture. By the 1920s and the rise of the Harlem Renaissance, the balls had gained more public visibility and became more closely associated with the gay community. The explosion of art, music, and literature in Harlem fueled the creation of a vibrant gay nightlife. And although it was illegal to dress in clothes of the opposite sex, drag queens were said to walk around rather openly. Though drag balls were created as a fun place to connect with other gay men, the association of the notorious balls to LGBT people continued to help pave the way for the establishment of queer culture. Harlem enhanced the solidarity of the gay world and symbolized the continuing centrality of the gender inversion to gay culture. The balls typically made it into Harlem's newspaper, the coverage both flattering and offensive, but by powering through the harassment and arrest, Harlem became a homosexual mecca. Police, politicians, and mainstream society found themselves simply unable to suspend the famous ball scene. Rather than abandon the scene, the participants fought for change and opportunity. From the early days of the ball, the remarkable persistence of patrons and ball organizers in the face of adversity, the ball drag scene was unstoppable. It was this fighting spirit that allowed balls to thrive, and that spirit lives on today within the LGBT community. Over time, Harlem's ball scene evolved. The once famous Hamilton Lodge Ball that took place annually at the Rockland Palace has since been knocked down in favor of a parking lot. Mickey, let me ask you, have you ever heard of the pansy craze?
No, I haven't. What's that?
Well, the pansy craze is essentially when people in the LGBT community performed on stages in cities around the world. But in New York's Greenwich Village, Times Square, and Harlem, it was at the center of everything. They hosted some of the most renowned drag acts of the 1920s. And well, I'll drink to that, because the prohibition in the US had a large part to play in things.
Oh, how so?
Well, because everyone was in search of delicious drink, of course.
I mean, me too, but what's the point?
Do you like to party?
I mean, yeah, I do.
Well, it's funny because rather than doing what it was supposed to do, Prohibition actually played a part in getting the party started. It brought people from all walks of life together in speakeasies and underground culture. Verity was reporting that Broadway will have night places with pansies as the main draw. While many Americans were disapproving of LGBT people, many of them were totally cool with their parties, performances, balls, and beauty contests.
Jealous much?
I guess some things never change, huh? You know what's great about the pansy craze?
What, that it's named after a flower?
What? No. That was home to my all-time favorite MC, Club Abby's Mullane. He gave Broadway its first glimpse of the pansy nightlife. Mullane ditched the dresses and reinvented itself as a high-camp, wappish, obviously gay man for the first time ever in an entertainer's entire act revolved around explicit queerness.
Novel, really.
No, yeah, you said it. What was novel is that he did not bring a drag act to the club, but instead performed in elegant men's clothing and brought with him a camp wit of gay subculture. If he was heckled by a man at the club, he knew how to cut them down to shreds to the delight of the crowd.
Kind of reminds me of Drag Races Season 5, Bianca Del Rio.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense why she's my favorite drag queen. Wait. Hey, don't get ahead of me here.
Right, so it must have seen that wherever pansies went, trouble followed.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Prohibition had forced legitimate bars to shut up, shops and mob-run speakeasies like that popped up in their place, or were openly flouting the law. So since these bars starred LGBT acts as well, you can guess what happened.
Right, it's pretty amazing just how widespread balls were.
It was just a widely integrated part of life in the 1920s and 30s. And with the end of the Prohibition came a ball similar to those depicted in the show Pose.
For those who don't know, Pose is set in the 1987, and it looks at the juxtaposition of several segments of life in society in New York. The rise of the luxury universe, the downtown social and literary scene, and even the ball culture world.
Right. So the balls as they were placed today on shows like Pose first emerged in the 1960s and early 70s with the creation of the first house, La Beija.
Next week, we'll get into House of La Beija with Sam for some more information about the early drag ball scene. We recommend George Chauncey's Gay New York, Gender, Urban Culture, and Making of the Gay Male World, 1890 to 1940. Next podcast is going to be November 10th next week. Be sure to join us.
Children, it is time we remind the world